Hello and welcome to the Bible Difficulties and Answers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Smith. Today we're diving into a fascinating and somewhat perplexing topic. We're examining Genesis 8:21, where God promises never again to destroy all living things, and comparing it with 2 Peter 3:10, which speaks of a future destruction by fire. Are these verses in contradiction? Or is there a deeper understanding to be found? As usual, I'll present a number of different opinions from my research and conclude with my own thoughts. Show notes will include links to all we discuss. Are you ready to dive in? All right, let's learn together. Genesis 8:21 from the New Living Translation. And the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice and said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of the human race, even though everything they think or imagine is bent toward evil from childhood. I will never again destroy all living things. All right, now the problem as defined by the Big Book of Bible Difficulties is this. According to this verse, after the flood, God promised, I will never again destroy all living things. Yet Peter foretells the day in which then the heavens will pass away with a terrible noise, and the very elements themselves will disappear in fire, and the earth and everything on it. Okay, now the solution, and we'll start with the Big Book of Bible Difficulties, is this. After the flood, God only promised never again to destroy the world in the same way as I have done, and we see that in Genesis 8:21, namely by water. The rainbow is a perpetual symbol of this promise. The second time God destroys the world, it will be by fire, not by water. It will disappear in fire, that's 2 Peter 3:10. Even so, God will not then destroy all living things. Humans will be saved in their resurrected and imperishable physical bodies, and we find that in 1 Corinthians 15:42. Now, this is interesting because in Genesis 8:21, God made a covenant with all of mankind when he spoke to himself. This brings us to an insightful article by Matt Slick titled, What is the Noahic Covenant? What is the Covenant with Noah? Published on November 8, 2018. Slick writes, the Noahic covenant is a one-sided covenant in that God is the one who initiated it, established it, carried it out, and designated the covenant sign. But what is different about the covenant with Noah from other biblical covenants is that it also includes the whole earth and every living creature, close quote. All right, now catch that. It is a one-sided covenant. God holds himself to this promise, asking nothing of humanity in return. This aspect of the Noahic covenant is crucial. It's a promise from God that extends beyond humanity to encompass the entire earth and every living creature, emphasizing the profound and inclusive nature of this divine commitment. All right, let's revisit the first part of the solution for the Big Book of Bible Difficulties. The initial explanation centers on God's promise not to destroy the earth by water again. This idea has additional scriptural backing, particularly in Psalm 104, verse 5, and this is traditionally attributed to King David. The verse says, Then you set a firm boundary for the seas, so they would never again cover the earth, close quote. All right, now this reinforces the promise found in Genesis 8:21, providing us with a consistent message throughout the Bible about God's commitment to never again flood the earth. Okay, we have God's covenant with humanity not to destroy the earth by water, and we backed it up with additional scripture in Psalms 104, verse 5. But what do others say about this covenant in Genesis 8:21? Specifically, is this verse speaking solely about God not destroying the earth by flood again in the future? From the Ligonier.org website, we find a devotional titled The Noahic Covenant. It states, like the covenant made with Adam, the Noahic covenant laid out in Genesis 8:20 through 9:17 is a covenant made with all of humanity, and it marks a new beginning for the world after the flood. A sacrifice ratifies this covenant, that's chapter 8, 20 through 21 in Genesis, and God promises never again to use a flood to destroy all life, close quote. All right, now this perspective highlights the broader scope of God's promise, emphasizing the fresh start for humanity and the assurance that a global flood will never again be used to destroy all life. Now, this perspective continues as the MacArthur Study Bible echoes the Big Book of Bible Difficulties, where it says, and I quote, Regardless of how sinful mankind would become in the future, God promised not to engage in a global catastrophe by flood again. Close quote. All right, now the notes for Genesis 8:21 in the MacArthur Study Bible then direct the reader to 2 Peter 3:3-10, which explains how God will destroy the earth in the future. This future destruction, described in 2 Peter 3:10, is something we will cover in detail in a separate episode of this podcast, many years from now, Lord willing. All right, to conclude this part of our research, let's look at an article by Eric Jones titled, God to Never Again Destroy Mankind. Jones writes, and I quote, after reading about Noah's offering, we find this fascinating scripture. This is one of the very few verses where we are given an insight into the very thoughts of God. Notice that this verse does not tell us what God said verbally to Noah, but what God said in his heart. The Hebrew literally means that God said this to his heart. After Noah's sacrifice, God made the decision that he would never again destroy every living thing in this manner. Close quote. All right, now back to me. I struggle with these explanations because they often seem like a bit of wordplay. The Big Book of Bible Difficulties and some additional articles parse God's statement in Genesis 8:21, which he made to himself, to mean no destruction of the earth by water. This feels a bit too convenient when compared to the universal destruction scenario described in 2 Peter 3:10. However, the second part of the explanation for the Big Book of Bible Difficulties, stating that humans will be saved in their resurrected and imperishable physical bodies, is absolutely correct. We'll delve more into this topic later in the podcast. Now, there seems to be more to Genesis 8:21 than just the assurance of no more floods. According to the Bible Ref website, in their article titled, What Does Genesis 8:21 Mean?, we read, and I quote, God's commitment is to never again curse the ground or the earth as he has done through the flood. This should not be read as God lifting the original curse on the ground in response to Adam's sin. The curse of the weeds and the frustrating toil and the work required to bring crops from the ground remains to this day. Instead, God's commitment here should be seen as a decision not to annihilate life on the ground as he did with the flood. The flood brought destruction to the whole earth, all on the ground. God is declaring he won't do that again. God seems to make this commitment while acknowledging that human nature has not been changed by the flood. Human beings will continue to harbor evil intentions from youth and throughout their lives. God knows this and decides not to respond to human sinfulness in the same way again by cursing the earth with a flood. Again, one of the issues I have with some explanations I found is that God seems to be playing a word game. Take, for instance, 2 Peter 3:10, which states, Then the heavens will pass away with a terrible noise, and the very elements themselves will disappear in the fire, and the earth and everyone on it will be found to deserve judgment. All right, now critics argue along the lines of God promised in 8:21 that he would never destroy the earth again by flood or water. He never said anything about fire. All right, to me, that's just semantics. It's like someone being arrested for hitting a man with a shovel, promising never to do it again, and then hitting another man with a baseball bat, claiming that the promise only applied to shovels and not to baseball bats. All right, so from the research we've just discussed, we see God affirming that he will never again curse the ground like he did with the flood. But Genesis 8:21 entails more than just the assurance of no more floods. From ChasingALion.com, we find an insightful article titled Biblical Principle Number 57, God Promised to Sustain the Earth. It emphasizes, certainly one aspect of God not cursing the earth would include this second promise, never to destroy all life from the planet. This promise is a big deal for multiple reasons. First, we can trust that God won't flood the earth again like in Noah's day. This brings a certain peace of mind for humanity. Second, God said he wouldn't destroy all life from the land. This gives us confidence in the face of modern concerns such as nuclear war, diseases, or even climate change. A wise Christian once told me humanity is always going to have at least one boogeyman to be afraid of, and I found this very true. What he meant was that there would always be imaginary threats that cause people to be afraid, for those who don't trust in God and His promises, close quote. All right, this article underscores how God's promise not to destroy all life from the earth provides assurance amidst the uncertainties of our time. Okay, so back to me and in conclusion, God's promise in Genesis 8:21 not to destroy the earth again with a flood goes beyond mere words. It speaks to a covenant that assures us of His faithfulness. When we look at 2 Peter 3:10, we see a different scenario, a cosmic end that involves the universe itself. Yet for Christians who have embraced the saving grace of Jesus Christ, there is hope. We anticipate entering the new heavens and the new earth where we will dwell in resurrected bodies prepared for eternity. This assurance comforts us, knowing that God's covenant in Genesis 8:21 will indeed be fulfilled. In our next episode, we'll explore Genesis 8:22. If seed time and harvest were never to be interrupted, why then do famines occur? Join us as we delve into this intriguing question. You may reach us at our website, BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers.podbean.com, or you may reach out to me directly at our email address, BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers@gmail.com, with any questions, comments, concerns, fits of righteous indignation, or just to say hi. Also, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell a friend or two as well, and also write a review and give it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, or any of your venues of choice. It really does help get the word out about the most amazing book ever written. Again, I'm Lance Smith. Until next time, I wish you good luck, good health, and God bless. So long, everybody.